The abandoned shopping mall on the outskirts of the city had stood empty for years. Its once bustling corridors now silent and decayed. Rumors circulated among the locals about the strange occurrences and eerie sightings within its walls. The few who ventured inside spoke of shadowy figures, inexplicable noises, and an overwhelming sense of dread. For most, it was simply a place to avoid, a dark spot on the edge of their community. But for a group of thrill-seeking friends, it was the perfect destination for a night of adventure. It was a chilly autumn evening when Jake, the leader of the group, convinced his friends to explore the old mall. His companions, Amy, Ben, and Lisa, were skeptical but intrigued. Armed with flashlights, a video camera, and a sense of excitement, they set out just after dusk. The mall's exterior was a haunting reminder of its former glory. Vines had overtaken the walls, and broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The entrance, once grand and welcoming, was now littered with debris and graffiti. As they approached, an uneasy feeling settled over them. But Jake pushed forward, determined to prove the ghost stories wrong. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of mildew. Their flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing long-forgotten stores with broken mannequins and empty shelves. The echoes of their footsteps seemed unnaturally loud in the vast, empty space. "Let's head to the food court," Jake suggested. "We can set up the camera there and document our exploration." The others agreed, albeit reluctant. Food court, once a lively hub of activity, was now a desolate wasteland. Tables and chairs were overturned, and the remnants of long-abandoned meals added to the eerie atmosphere. They set up the camera in the center and began to explore. As they wandered through the various areas, the friends couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Strange noises echoed through the corridors, footsteps, whispers, and the occasional distant cry. Amy, sensitive to the supernatural, felt an oppressive presence growing stronger with each passing minute. In one of the deserted stores, they found a tattered map of the mall. "Look at this," Lisa said, holding it up. "There's a basement level. Maybe that's where all the spooky stuff is." Jake's eyes lit up with excitement. "Let's check it out." The entrance to the basement was hidden behind a partially collapsed wall. They squeezed through, their flashlights barely cutting through the thick darkness. The temperature dropped noticeably as they descended the creaky stairs, adding to the sense of foreboding. At the bottom, they found themselves in a maze of maintenance corridors and storage rooms. Air was damp and cold, and the walls were covered in mold. As they ventured deeper, the strange noises grew louder, more distinct. Suddenly, Ben stopped. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The others listened, their hearts pounding. From somewhere ahead came the sound of dragging footsteps, slow and deliberate. They exchanged nervous glances but pressed on, curiosity overriding their fear. They turned a corner and found themselves in a large, open room filled with old equipment and scattered boxes. In the center stood a rusted metal door, slightly ajar. Faint, flickering light emanated from within. Jake pushed the door open, revealing a small, dimly lit office. Papers were strewn across the floor, and an old desk sat in the corner. But what caught their attention was a series of photographs pinned to the walls. Each one showed various parts of the mall, but in every picture there was a shadowy figure lurking in the background. "What is this?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, the door slammed shut behind them. They spun around, their flashlights illuminating the now closed exit. Panic set in as they tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. "We need to get out of here," Amy said, voice shaking. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and the lights flickered violently. The friends huddled together, fear gripping them as an otherworldly presence filled the air. The photographs on the walls began to flutter, and a low, menacing growl echoed through the room. Then, as quickly as it started, chaos ceased. The room was plunged into an eerie silence, broken only by their ragged breathing. Slowly, the door creaked open, and they wasted no time in fleeing. Back in the corridors, their sense of unease intensified. They hurried through the maze-like basement, desperately trying to find their way back. The mall seemed to twist and shift around them, turning their escape into a nightmarish labyrinth. Finally, they emerged back into the main area of the mall, their relief short-lived as they realized the atmosphere had grown even more oppressive. The once familiar layout now seemed alien, distorted by the malevolent force that inhabited the building. "We need to get back to the food court and get out of here," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. As they made their way back, they noticed a change in the mall. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, and the whispers grew louder, almost intelligible. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, and the air was thick and otherworldly chill. When they reached the food court, they found the camera they had set up earlier. Jake grabbed it, intending to review the footage later. But as they turned to leave, they saw a figure standing at the far end of the food court. It was a tall, dark silhouette, its features obscured by the shadows. "Run!" Jake shouted, and they bolted for the exit. As they fled through the mall, the figure seemed to follow, always just out of sight but never far behind. Their fear reached a fever pitch as they neared the entrance, their breaths coming in frantic gasps. They burst through the doors and into the cold night air, not stopping until they reached their car. Heart pounding, Jake fumbled with the keys, finally getting the engine started. They sped away from the mall, ominous silhouette still fresh in their minds. Back at Jake's house, they huddled together, reviewing the footage from the camera. The early parts of their exploration seemed normal, but as they approached the basement, strange anomalies began to appear. Shadows moved without explanation, and faint whispers could be heard in the background. But the most chilling part was the footage from the office. The camera had captured the photographs fluttering and the door slamming shut on its own. And in the final moments before they fled, it caught a glimpse of the dark figure standing in the corner, watching them with malevolent intent. "What the hell was that?" Ben asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Jake replied, "but whatever it is, not just an urban legend." Amy shuddered. "We need to tell someone about this. The mall isn't safe." They agreed to report their findings to the local authorities. Deep down, they knew it was unlikely anyone would believe them. The mall had claimed a part of their lives, leaving them with a haunting memory they would never forget. In the days that followed, they struggled to return to normalcy. The events of that night weighed heavily on their minds, and the sense of being watched persisted. They avoided talking about the mall, but the shared experience had forged an unspoken bond between them. One evening, Jake received a call from Amy. "I've been doing some research," she said. "There were a series of disappearances at the mall before it closed. People went missing, and their bodies were never found." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You think it's connected?" "I don't know, but it's too much of a coincidence to ignore," Amy replied. "We need to find out more." Determined to uncover the truth, they delved into the mall's history, piecing together a disturbing pattern, unexplained events and cover-ups. The disappearances, the strange sightings, and the eventual closure of the mall all pointed to something sinister lurking within its walls. Their investigation led them to an old newspaper article detailing the final days of the mall. A security guard had reported seeing a dark figure in the basement, and shortly after, he vanished without a trace. The mall's owners had dismissed his claims as the ravings of a disturbed mind, but now the friends knew better. Armed with this new information, they decided to return to the mall, this time with a clearer sense of purpose. They contacted a local paranormal investigator, hoping his expertise could help them uncover the mall's dark secrets. The investigator, a grizzled man named Tom, agreed to join them. "I've heard about this place," he said. "It's got a reputation, but I've never had the chance to investigate it myself. Let's see what we can find." With Tom leading the way, they ventured back into the abandoned mall. This time, they were better prepared, armed with more equipment and a stronger resolve. As they entered, the oppressive atmosphere returned. They pressed on, determined to confront the malevolent presence head-on. Tom set up his equipment in the food court, where the friends had experienced the most activity. He explained that he would be using a combination of electromagnetic field (EMF) detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recorders to capture any paranormal phenomena. As they began their investigation, the mall seemed to come alive with activity. EMF detectors spiked erratically, and cold spots appeared on the thermal cameras. Whispers echoed through the corridors, and shadows danced just beyond the range of their flashlight. In the basement, Tom discovered an old journal hidden among the debris. The journal belonged to the mall's original security guard, the one who had vanished. It detailed his experiences with the dark figure, describing it as a malevolent spirit that preyed on the living. He believed the spirit was responsible for the disappearances. Explained, he thought it was bound to the mall, feeding off the fear and despair of those who entered. As they read through the journal, the atmosphere grew more intense. The air became thick with a sense of impending doom, and the friends felt a presence closing in around them. "We need to perform a cleansing," Tom said. "It's the only way to rid this place of the spirit." With the journal as their guide, they gathered the necessary materials and began the ritual. As they chanted the ancient words, the mall seemed to react violently. The walls trembled, and the shadows coalesced into the dark figure that had haunted them before. The figure lunged at them, but Tom held his ground, continuing the ritual with unwavering determination. Friends joined in, their voices rising in unison as they confronted the malevolent spirit. Slowly, the figure began to dissolve, its form unraveling like smoke in the wind. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the mall grew silent once more. Cleansing had worked. The spirit was banished. Exhausted but triumphant, they left the mall, knowing they had finally put an end to its terror. The experience had changed them, but it had also brought them closer together. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. In the weeks that followed, the mall was finally demolished, making way for new development. The friends moved on with their lives, but the bond they had forged that night remained. They knew they had done something important, something that would be remembered long after the mall was gone. And though the dark figure was no more, the memory of their encounter served as a reminder that some places hold secrets best left undisturbed. The abandoned mall had been a place of terror, but in the end, it had also been its of redemption.